Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Leslie presents. And now your host, Paul Leslie.
Who is Bruce Burch?
Well, Bruce Burch, first and foremost, is a songwriter. That's what got me in the music business, and what probably I made more money doing that than anything in the music business. I have become through when the money quit coming in so much as a songwriter, I moved over to the business side and became a music publisher, and worked for the EMI Music Publishing, one of the biggest companies, which now has just been bought by Sony ATV. But that moved me into that direction, and then I got into academia over at the University of Georgia, and since then Kennesaw State, and now at Brenau University, teaching music business. So, but first and foremost, the thing that got me there, the thing that I'm just still in love with, is songwriting.
I think most stories are best from the beginning. What was life like growing up?
Well, I grew up in Gainesville, Georgia, poultry capital of the world, and my dad was in the poultry industry, so I spent a lot of time in chicken houses. I always say now that no matter how much poop I have to walk through in the music business, it could never top the poop I walked through in the poultry industry. So, I grew up there and loved music always. I was a big Beatles fan. Obviously, everybody that grew up in the 60s was, and Rolling Stones, and really didn't listen to country music until college age, so, but it was always music was involved. I loved music from the time even though I didn't play and didn't sing growing up.
What got you hooked on country music?
Kris Kristofferson. Kris Kristofferson, I think, when I first heard him, it was like, even though the guy was not a great singer, not a great guitar player, but just an amazing writer, and I'd always been into poetry, and he was the first guy who I think put poetry into country music. Maybe not the first guy, but he's the guy that sort of became the guy who carried that flag of brought kind of put Bob Dylan and mixed him with Johnny Cash, and then the rest is history.
Tell us about the song "For the Good Times."
That song is the reason I am in the music business. I heard it. I had broken up with a girlfriend. I had quit. I'd gone to East Tennessee State University to play football my freshman year. Had quit football, so I'd lost my two loves of my life. I had lost, and so it was just I was feeling a sense of loss when I heard that song, and it hit me. It just like it was when I heard Kris Kristofferson singing that song when I walked in an apartment one night. It was like he was singing my life, and it drew me into, like I said, what country songs, the best country songs, you feel like they're singing your life, and that's what I always, when I look for a great country song, that's what I look for in it.
Tell us about the first song you wrote.
That would have been a song about my grandmama. Like I said, I'd been listening to Kris Kristofferson and Mickey Newberry, and I started listening to some other writers, and the next thing you know, I pick up a guitar and began writing, and the first thing that popped out was a song about my grandma. We'd been up to visit her and came back, and I wrote a song called Grandma Mackie, and I've probably written more songs about my other than a woman. I've probably written more songs about grandparents and family than anything else. I think that's sort of been a theme that's recurred throughout my career as a songwriter.
You mentioned Kris Kristofferson. What songwriters have influenced you the most?
Well, definitely Kris Kristofferson. Mickey Newberry early on. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He wrote, just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in, and put an American trilogy together. Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark, or two, John Prine, more of the folk country artist, and then once I got into country music, guys like Bob McDill, guys like Harlan Howard, the simplicity of country music, the writers, the pure country writers, not so much the artist writers.
How did you feel the first time a song you wrote was recorded by an artist?
Well, the first time it was recorded, was one by Slim Pickens, the character actor, it never got released. It was called its own. I was running a hot dog shop at the time, and I chopped onions every day, and I wrote a song called "It's Only These Onions That's Making Me Cry." And because when I chopped the onions, I would tear up, and it was kind of a comedy song. Well, Slim cut the song, and it never got released. So it was disappointment the first time my first song got recorded. But the good news about that is he recorded one other song out of the Combine Music Catalog, which is where my song was published by, and that was a Kris Kristofferson song. So I took it as a sign that even though that song was not released to the general public, nobody ever heard it. I never even heard it, his version of it. Because he cut a Kris Kristofferson song, I took it as a sign that I was meant to keep doing it. And that song getting recorded probably meant more to me than just about any other song I ever had recorded, because it was at a point in time when I was just about ready to give up. And even though I didn't have any financial success with that song, it gave me the passion to keep going on, I thought, well, maybe I can do this,
But you never heard the song?
Never heard the song, not that he recorded, no. I still do it when I play out. I do it live because I always tell that story about, I didn't even get to meet him. I was so busy I was still working my job at the hot dog shop, and so when he was in recording, I was working all day, so I didn't get to meet him. But one of the song pluggers that had gotten that song recorded, went over there, met him, and said, Slim, this is this boy's first cut he's ever had. And he says, if you remember Slim Pickens, how he talked, he said, well, he's dang sure starting at the bottom. And sure enough, I was starting at the bottom. But it was a real, like I say, the first song that I ever had recorded that got released was by the Oak Ridge Boys back on one of their very first Christmas album. And that's the one that I guess made me realize I can do this, because I actually when I got recorded, I got to go to the bank and get a $15,000 loan against earnings to come in, and that could have been $150,000 at that particular time. I mean, it meant so much to me to know that I could make that kind of money writing songs, that I knew then I was going to be a lifer, is what I call a lifer in the music business, is somebody that never, is going to figure out a way to make a living at it for the rest of my life, and that's what I did.
When you heard that song that the Oak Ridge Boys recorded, was it on an album or was it on the radio? When was the first time you heard it?
First time I heard it was just, on an album. It got played. It got a good bit of radio play, though, over the years. The beauty about Christmas songs that I don't know if you've ever interviewed any guys that have written big Christmas hits. This wasn't a big hit, but it still gets played to this day, because Christmas songs come back year after year after year,
Right.
I mean, I used to talk to the guy whose dad, I think, wrote Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. When I was at EMI, they published that song, and I used to talk to the son of the guy who wrote that. Every year he would call and ask who recorded that song, who recorded the song this year. And sure enough, every year it would get re-recorded, and, of course, got, unbelievable amounts of airplay. So the guy who wrote that son is still living on that song,
Tell us about the song you wrote, Rumor Has It.
Rumor Has It was my first number one, and that will always be a special song because of that. It got recorded several times before Reba McEntire recorded it. And it got recorded by Freddie Hart. It got recorded by Ricky Skaggs and Tammy Wynette, but they never. I think Freddie Hart released it, but Tammy didn't ever release it, and Ricky Skaggs never released it. And so, thank goodness, when Reba recorded it, it came out, and not only was it a hit number one single, it was also the title of the album, and that really sort of put me on the map as a songwriter. I mean, I had a couple of top tens before that, but this was having a number one, definitely puts you on the map.
What song of the songs you've written are you the most proud of?
Probably a song called Wine into Water that T. Graham Brown, a guy named T. Graham Brown, who I knew from Georgia, we co-wrote that song together with a guy named Ted Hewitt. And that song has probably affected more lives than any song. It's basically a recovery song, And they used it in, I don't know how many people have come up and told me that have been in AA or treatment, for substance abuse, that they use that song in there. And so it's I think it's saved a few lives. So that's been really a meaningful song to me. And it's probably, if not my best song, it's definitely up there in my top 5 best songs I've ever written.
You recorded another song, The Last Resort.
T. Graham did. Yeah, The Last Resort was a top 5 record, my first top 5 record. And that was a special song because, I mean, it was the first top 5. And T. Graham was so good to me. I mean, he recorded, I think, 8 songs that we either wrote, or actually, I think we co-wrote all of them. And he was a guy from Georgia. You know, we had become friends, and he sort of gave me that song sort of put me on the map, I guess. It got me in the top 10 and opened a lot of doors for me. So I'll always be indebted to him. And he's such an amazing singer. Still to this day sings. I mean, he's my age, which is I'm 59. I think he's got to be he may be a little younger than I am, but he still sings like a 20-year-old, you know.
You've written with the late Dobie Gray.
Yes.
What are your memories of writing with him?
Dobie was, boy, talking about a singer now. He was probably I don't know if he would say he was the best singer, but he definitely, I used to get chill bumps writing with him just because he sang so beautifully. And we wrote one song in particular called "It's Not Because We Didn't Try," that I still think it's not been a hit for anybody. It's, Pam Tillis recorded it one time, but it never got released. I get a lot of those songs that don't get released, it seems like, you know. But I still think that song has got life left in it. And Dobie was a special person too. He had a lot of soul. Probably the most soulful guy I ever wrote with.
There's a song you wrote that was recorded by Billy Joe Royal.
Mm-hmm.
What was the inspiration behind Out of Sight and On My Mind?
Out of Sight and On My Mind. I had that title and ended up writing it with Rick Peoples. And Rick and I'd be honest with you, when we wrote the song, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was a great song. I thought it had a good feel to it, and we demoed it. The demo came out really good. And but Rick and I never wrote another song. We wrote that one song together, and it came out and was a top 10 hit. And of course, Billy Joe Royal, I'd grown up listening to Billy Joe Royal, so it was a big thrill to get a song recorded by him because he's such a great singer. And that was like a 50s kind of song, and I was really into the whole 50s music scene too. So that was a pretty special song. Yeah, I still like that one.
It had to have been incredible when George Jones recorded a song you wrote.
Yeah, that song has been recorded now 3 times. I wrote it with T. Graham Brown and Bruce Bowden. Bruce Bowden is a songwriter, but he's also a great steel guitar player. And we wrote Last Resort together as well, T. Graham and Bruce and I. And George, when T cut that song, he did a great job on it. Trisha Yearwood, by the way, sang the demo, which you ought to hear the demo. It's really great, too. And then to get George Jones to record it. And then it just got recently recorded. Somebody heard it on a George Jones album and took it and recorded it, and that was Gene Watson and Rhonda Vincent. And their version is great. So I've been lucky on that song. Like I say, that's 3 times it's been recorded, and I tell you, still, Trisha Yearwood's version is right up there. I wish we could get her to record it because she did such a great job on the demo. I think we paid her $40.
Oh,
yeah.
Speaking of Gene Watson, he recorded I Catch Myself.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind that one?
That song I wrote by myself, which is something I rarely do. I went through a little period there where I just took some time and sat back and wrote by myself, and I wrote that song, which got recorded by Gene Watson, and another song called I Was Losing You that got recorded. It's been recorded 4 times by Wayne Newton. I can't remember who else has recorded it, but I don't know. That one came pretty much straight out of it. Just fell out of me. Usually I start with a title, and I didn't start with a title. I just started with the first line and worked down. And then when I got to the title, it was a hook. I Catch Myself, Falling in Love is what the kind of the hook was. And I didn't have that originally. That's the first time I've ever come up with kind of a hook writing, in the middle of the song. The hook just kind of came out, and that usually you start with a hook, or usually I start with a hook. And then when by a hook, I mean a title or something, and in that case I didn't. So that was a rare occasion, and a rare occasion that I wrote by myself. I should do it more often because I really think you write a different kind of song by yourself than you do when you co-write. I'm not saying it's a better song I write by myself, but it's just usually more heartfelt. It's not as it's not been edited down as much sometimes, I think.
When you wrote the song "You Can't Keep a Good Memory Down" that John Anderson recorded,
John Anderson, yeah.
Did the title come first on that one?
title did come first. I had that title. There's an interesting story behind that song. I wrote it with a guy named Roger Murrah and his brother Michael Murrah. And Roger was a guy who had several hits already. He was a pretty hot songwriter at the time. I was still waiting tables at Houston's restaurant, and Roger used to come in and I'd wait on him. Well, Roger drank iced tea, a lot of iced tea, and so I'd just keep his iced tea glass full. And so one day, after I'd been waiting on him, I'd never told him I was a songwriter. And Roger figured it out, though, because I kept his iced tea glass so full, and probably ignored some of my other customers because I was being so attentive to Roger. And he said, he says, "You're a songwriter, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And he said, "I can just kind of tell that you spent a lot of time waiting on me." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Well, you've been such a good waiter." He said, "Let's write a song next week." And so I went over and we wrote that next week. That was the first song we wrote. So that was my first top 40 record. So I always tell people that I got my first top 40 song, not by being a great songwriter, but by being a good waiter and keeping somebody's iced tea glass full. And I tell my students a lot of times, even if you're working a menial job, you never know who you're going to meet through that menial job, and that might be the person that, gets you to that next level. So always remember that when you're out there waiting tables or running a hot dog shop or being a desk clerk, which are all the jobs I had in Nashville before I was able to make a living writing full time.
What about My Train of Thought?
That was a song I wrote with a guy named Michael Woody, who was, that was the only thing that we ever had recorded together, I think. But Barbara Mandrell recorded it, and she was pretty hot. It was a top 20 song. And it was just an honor to get a song recorded by her, because at this particular time, Barbara had been on national TV and probably took country music. I think was probably the first female artist to take country music to the national level like that. Johnny Cash had a TV show, and I think Roger Miller had a summer, and Glenn Campbell had a TV show. But as far as I know, Barbara Mandrell might have been the first country artist to have her own TV show, the Barbara Mandrell Show, the Mandrell Sisters, I believe. Can't remember exactly, but she was an icon, and was so nice too. I got to meet her and get a picture made with her and stuff, and just was such a nice lady. And I always will remember that song because she did such a great job on it too.
A lot of the artists that have recorded your songs are country singers, but we can't leave out the great Wayne Newton.
Wayne
who recorded your song.
I get a call from a guy named Rhubarb Jones, who is a DJ, a Hall of Fame DJ, or a radio personality, as they call him now, as they call you now. And Rhubarb said he was good friends with Wayne, and he said, "Man, Wayne Newton's looking for some songs. Why don't you send me some, and I'll send him." He called me and asked me to help him find some songs, and I told him I'd call some of my songwriter friends. So I sent Rhubarb the tape, and he sent it on out to Wayne, and Rhubarb calls me back about a week later and says, "Man, Wayne loves 3 of those songs you sent him." And I thought, okay, sure, great. Maybe I'll end up with maybe 1 song getting recorded if I'm lucky, Well, he said, "Send me some more." So I sent Rhubarb some more songs, and he calls me back about a week later and says, "Man, Wayne likes 2 more of these songs. He's coming to town in a few weeks, and he's going to record, and he's going to record 5 of your songs." And I said, well, I still thought, oh, there's no way that'll happen. He probably ended up recording 1 of them, But he really went in, and not only did he go in, they called me up and invited me down to the studio. So even though I'm not a producer at all, I sort of got to chime in on the songs, and he recorded all 5 of those songs. And I went on to write a couple more songs with Wayne for another project he was doing, and got to know him. And I'll tell you, speaking of nice people, he is one of the nicest guys I've ever met as an artist, And when my mama passed away this past August, I get a call one day from all the people I've known in the music business at that level. I didn't hear from anybody, but Wayne Newton called me and told me he was sorry to hear about me losing my mama. And I kept that tape because that meant so much to me. And he's a special person, he really is. And a great talent, amazing. I mean, obviously one of the greatest entertainers of all time. And, a lot of people make fun of Wayne Newton, but I tell you what, I'm proud to have those songs recorded. And he actually did one of them on Roseanne's show.
Wow.
Yeah, I know so. and that was had a pretty good run on TV and made some pretty good royalties.
Let's talk about another songwriter. Let's talk about John Gerard.
Wow. John Gerard and I grew up together, as I've told you, and here in Gainesville, Georgia. And John and I both got into country music at the same time, and we didn't even realize it. I used to see him at country concerts, but we didn't realize that each other had both started writing songs until one night he stops in I'm working as a desk clerk out of the Days Inn here in Gainesville, Georgia, and he stops in out there to see me, and I have my guitar behind the desk, and he said, "What are you doing with the guitar back there?" And I said, "Well, I play and write a little bit, you know." And he said, "Well, I do too." And so I said, "You're kidding." We had no idea that, you know, we'd grown up together and both went to the University of Georgia, but neither one of us had any idea, because he wasn't real musical either. Like I said, I was not a musical person, you know, growing up. He wasn't either. And we both got into country music and started writing songs, and so we sort of fed each other's fire. In fact, we recorded our first demos down there we had figured out that, you know, they always said the bathroom was the nearest thing to a recording studio if you were going to record. So we got us a reel-to-reel player, and we went down and set up in the Days Inn bathroom, and that's where we recorded our first demos. And they're god-awful sounding, but we fed each other's fire, is what I always said. And after I moved to Nashville first, he moved up there about 8 months later, and he would always say, "You know, you're the reason I moved to Nashville." And I'd always tell him, I said, "Well, you're the reason I stayed," because he had great success. He had 11 number one songs, and I always felt like I was trying to catch up to him, you know, because he did such had such an amazing career. And also the guy was, had a lot of physical ailments that held him back, and he still was able to have 11 number one songs. He was a childhood diabetic, and so he had lost his sight. He lost his sight after he moved to Nashville, as a matter of fact. He ended up losing he had a kidney and pancreas transplant. He ended up having parts of his fingers removed, and then had both legs removed at the knee before he passed on about it's been 11 years ago, I believe now, almost 12 years ago now. But to be able to achieve all that he achieved with that was a true inspiration, not only to me, but to, you know, hundreds of songwriters in Nashville that's why we're so glad to be able to have this concert that we have in his name here in Gainesville, Georgia now, and to keep his memory alive, because he was truly a unique and amazing human being, you know.
Well, tell us a little bit about this concert. It's going to be on September 15th.
Yes, we have it every year in the fall. We do this concert. We call it just the John Gerard concert. He and I used to do some benefits down here when he was alive, and after he passed away, they asked me to keep on doing these benefits. And I told him, I said, well, the only way I'll do it is if we dedicate it to John, call it the John Gerard Concert, and we donate it to the causes that John supported while he was alive, which were Boys and Girls Club, Good News at Noon, which is a homeless food program, Good News at Noon Clinic, which is a homeless medical program. And then we've gone on and given to some other charities now, because we've raised over $1 million in the 10 years we've been doing this concert. But it started out just real small. I mean, we had 30 tables of 8 people, I think, so we had like 250 people at the very first one, and now we have about 1,200 that show up every year, and we bring down songwriters from Nashville, and it's a songwriter show, which is unusual because it's not a headliner usually. I mean, we don't really have a big, you know, Garth Brooks or anybody like that coming down. I mean, we usually have just songwriters, and people have really grown to love the show. Like I said, the community supports it amazingly here in Gainesville, Georgia. And that's one thing I said when we decided to do it, too. I said, well, I want to name this thing after John, and I want to have the right people involved. And we obviously got the right people involved, because it's just been a huge success every year. And we've now started a thing called First Verse, which is a songwriting program that we're trying to go into schools and teach kids how to, write songs, because songwriting is such a great way to learn the language. I know I use a dictionary probably more than I ever did after I started writing songs, and learned just so much about the language, and just discipline, the writing of how writing songs is such a discipline and a craft, I think it really teaches you patience and sort of like putting together crossword puzzles, I guess, in a certain way. But we've done all this to try to keep John's memory alive and to carry it on and to keep songwriting, to make songwriting, make people realize that there are songwriters out there. It's not just about the artist, that songwriters are they're the lifeblood of this industry. I still think, even now, when so many artists are writing their own songs, still, to me, the best songs come from the pure, what I call pure songwriters, that aren't necessarily singers, aren't necessarily performers, but they are the guys like the Johnny Mercers, the Irving Berlins, the Cole Porters, that never really were known as performers so much, but were really more so known as writers. And I hope we can keep that. That's one of our goals for the John Gerard Foundation too, is to point out that fact. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it, because we, like I say, it continues to grow every year.
So this is going to be September 15th,
yes,
2012, at the Campus Green, Brenau University.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the songwriters that are going to be there.
Well, we've got Jim Collins coming, who is, he wrote Big Green Tractor for Jason Aldean. He wrote She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy for Kenny Chesney. So he's had a lot of luck with tractor songs. He also has written several other songs for Kenny Chesney, and he just had a big hit this last year with, I can't think of the name of the group he had, but Are You Gonna Kiss Me or Not? Big country record this last year. It was probably the most played song of the year by Thompson Station, I believe it was. That's the name of that duo. And then we're having Jeffrey Steele, who was probably had more songs recorded in the last 10 years than any songwriter in Nashville. Again, I'm not as familiar with all his songs, but Jeffrey will be there. We'll have, if you Google Jeffrey Steele, you can see his number of songs up. I know he did write the Big Rascal Flatts thing. I'm drawing a blank on the title, but anyway, we're going to have Tony Arata, who wrote The Dance, among many other hits he's had, and a guy named Fred Knobloch, who has not had that many hits, but Fred is one of those writers who's had a lot of songs recorded, and he's one of those writers that's just a great performer writer. Some writers are not such great performers, but this Fred is, and he's coming down to, because he was a big John fan and friend. And so that's the four we've got nailed down. We'll probably have some others that we'll announce in the next few weeks, but we're really looking forward to this year. I think it's going to be another great year.
What is the website for the John Gerard Foundation?
It's www.johngerard, and that's JOHNJARRARD Foundation.com. That's johngerardfoundation.com. And if you can go there and check up, you can get the updates and who's going to be there as we announce. We're still 2 months out, so we're going to nail it down in the next couple of weeks of who all we're going to have there. But you can go to that website and see more, learn more about the songwriters. I obviously didn't prepare to tell you about the song titles today, except for sorry about that.
That's okay. What is the best thing about being Bruce Burch?
Ooh, I can tell you a lot of reasons not to be Bruce Burch, but I must say the best thing about getting to be Bruce Burch is I've gotten to meet all my heroes. Not all my heroes, but I've gotten to meet a lot of my heroes. I mean, I got to meet Kris Kristofferson, and get to know him and pitch his songs when I worked at EMI. And I told him one time, I said, you're the reason I'm in the music business. He says, don't blame that crap on me. If you know Kris and his voice, to hear him say that. But I got to meet Tony Joe White. I've gotten to meet Wayne Newton. I mean, I've gotten to meet just a lot of people that I never dreamed I would meet, Reba McEntire, Barbara Mandrell. I mean, and it still goes on. I mean, even today, I meet, I'm trying to think of somebody I've met that just blown me away. But just meeting a lot of my musical heroes, and I think, and I got Johnny Cash actually did on a Colin Ray song I had recorded one time. Johnny Cash actually did a narration part on the front end. We had written the narration part of it, and he actually did that. So I can sort of say I had a Johnny Cash cut, and I guess,
That's cool.
I mean, that's the best thing about being Bruce Burch is that I've gotten to make a living in music and the music business, and it has not always been easy. I mean, I always say I did not have the talent, but I definitely had the desire and the drive and the determination and the perseverance, I think, more than anything. And people that I tell songwriters, I always like to say, the thing that really is the most, I think the best talent you can have is, if you want to be a songwriter, is perseverance. Because it took me 7 years to give up my full-time job as running a hot dog shop, and then it took me another 3 years to give up my part-time job of waiting tables, and along with being a desk clerk in early years that I was in Nashville, the first year I was in Nashville. So I did a lot of things to be able to do what I wanted to do. I did a lot of things I didn't necessarily like doing to be able to do what I wanted to do, and so it's paid off. Even though sometimes it's the music business can be a grind, and it can seem it's tough. It's a tough life sometimes. If you can ask anybody, they'll tell you that it's especially for your wife and family, if you have those. It's not always easy being around a songwriter or living the songwriter life, but I don't regret any of it ever, because I've gotten to do all that, and that's the best thing about being Bruce Burch.
You've been involved with, well, more than involved, been a very big part of the John Gerard Foundation. You've taught people about music business. You've written songs. You've plugged songs. A lot of people have crossed paths. Some of them we know, and then there's countless others. Some of them are going to be listening to this interview. And then there's other people who are going to be listening that haven't met you yet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say to all the folks who are listening in, whether they're listening on the radio or they're listening on the internet?
Well, I guess the best thing I can tell you, the best piece of advice I can give anybody is whatever their dream is if you're going to do it, is to, believe in it enough to give it time, because it definitely, dreams don't happen overnight. I mean, anybody that you see that's doing what they want to do, whether it's being a songwriter or running a big company or whatever, it takes time to work your way to that position. And they didn't get there overnight. And I guess that's, my daddy never had a lot of success as a business person, but he was really a hard-working man, and my mama too. And that's what I learned from them, is just to work hard and try to keep believing in yourself, even when you don't necessarily believe in yourself. Fake it till you make it. I just really believe that that's the thing my life has been about, is because I've struggled in the music business at times, but it's to keep going and to keep believing in yourself, even when you don't. Sometimes, is to try to keep the perseverance and sticking to it till you can be successful, And success that's the other thing I've learned, is success is, there's varying levels of success, and you got to find success in the little things, because that's what, like now, my success now for me is having 2 grandkids, and that to me is, when I see them, that's the thing I'm the most proud of. I mean, more so than my songs or anything, and that's the thing that I'm still learning, is that I'm 59 years old. I'm still learning a lot about life and things like that. The things that really matter, and success is a term that changes as you grow older.
Well, Bruce Burch, it's been a great pleasure.
Absolutely, pleasure for me too, Paul. As always.
All
Good
right.
to see you, buddy.
Thank you.